Hi and welcome back. My name's Shen and here with me is
Andy Wigley.
Cool. So, what's the topic now then, Andy?
Well, this is getting to the meat of things now.
Yeah.
This is kind of the most important, if you like. We're talking about adapting your UI to different screens. So, if you've been following through the sessions, we've talked about a lot of technology. We've even shown a lot of examples.
Yes.
But this is where we kind of drill down and say, okay, give you some guidance and actually take you through the techniques, show you the Visual Studio tooling for creating UI that will adapt across different screens.
So this is going to be quite jam-packed, I take it, with a lot of
takeaways.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff
all
in
right.
this one, yeah. So, first of all, we're going to just talk about the kind of design, a few design principles. Not a lot. I mean, this is not a session for designers, really. There's obviously, we're all, as app developers, we're all designers to a degree, but then we're talking about, you know, how you think about the design for this widely varying different kinds of screens we've got. And then we drill down onto, okay, that's the principles, how do we do it?
Yes. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so here we are, we've got all of these devices. We've seen these already. Lots of them. Lots of different screen sizes.
Lots of device types, screen sizes, form factors. It's
highly diverse, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually even this guy, the HoloLens, you know, if you write an app, UWP app, where you're thinking of a 2D screen that it's being displayed on, well, these guys, HoloLens, you can actually project it, you know, you can have a holographic, a projection of that in your field of vision, just the same. So, you know, this is it. This is the family of Windows 10 for now.
Yeah.
More in the future. And all of these have, you know, all of these different devices. So, how do we actually think about creating a single UI that's going to target a good number of those? So, in actual fact, of course, we showed that huge diversity of devices, and the majority of developers, let's be honest, are not going to be. We're not saying you create a UWP app, you have to create a UI that's going to work on a.
They sort of know
Pi.
what they're going to target, right? They know they're going to be on this section.
The majority of devs are going to be targeting that kind of middle ground, if you like, of laptops, large tablets, right down through to smartphones. That's going to be the bread and butter for most folks. So we're going to concentrate on that, but. And actually, of course, other screens like Xbox, we haven't released those tools yet. So further, when we do a future revision of this developer's guide, we'll start talking about that and about HoloLens some more. But for now, we're going to concentrate on those guys. So first of all, this kind of reflects back on a question we had earlier this morning, which is sort of saying, well, you know, new project templates are a little blank.
Yep.
No, they're completely blank. There's nothing in there.
There isn't nothing there, yeah.
Yeah. And you know, where's the kind of examples gone? So the thing is, we actually don't want to be too prescriptive about how things should look. We really want you to
Innovate and create the best of breed applications, really, And that's you don't want them all looking like our templates, I suppose.
No, that's right. And you know, we want you to use your designs and your fonts, your icons. Yeah, that says. So by all means, look at how we've done our first-party apps. So that's a good example of how things work. But you know, use your own inspiration and guidance. And there will be a lot of new project templates and beginners guidance. So now, first of all, when you're thinking about layout, there's this magic number 4.
4 is the magic number. Yes. So why is 4 the magic number then?
So lists must have 4 items in them. No, that's not what it's saying. Spacing. Now, we're going to talk about effective pixels in a minute. So, essentially, we've always given guidance about what should a margin be, what should the spacing between elements should be. So, and we've shifted yet again, but we have converged our layout system. So we've got this effective pixels that extends across all of our screens and all our devices.
Yep.
But the magic rule with this is, as we scale up and down across things, they need to be divisible by 4. So if you make sure that your margins, your divisions and this sort of thing are divisible by 4, you're going to be in a good place. Now, rules are for breaking, so, you know. Yeah. But that's the guidance, so you can essentially do whatever you like. But even our, you know, we've got an example down there with 48 pixel.
I suppose it stops you from getting that sub-pixel problem with different screen sizes and stuff.
That's right, as things get scaled up and down.
Yeah,
so these kind of
you
annoying,
don't get that blurry
subtle misalignment things. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, we talked about this. This all comes down to this scaling algorithm. So the thing is, we've got a lot of different screens here.
Yeah.
And we have got, what you really have to think about these things in 3D. And if you think about looking at a UI on a phone screen, you've also got to think about the typical viewing distance. So the phone screen tends to be pretty much up in front of your face.
Yeah.
And your laptop's a bit further out. And then your, obviously, a desktop, big desktop monitor is a bit further out again. And then by the time you get to an Xbox, well, that's across your living room.
Yeah, it's like a 10 feet experience, right?
That's right. And the Surface hub is huge, wall-mounted.
But then you're kind of scribbling on it pretty close.
That's kind of a special case, yeah, that's right. But the key thing here is you have got a viewing distance, and our scaling algorithm takes that into account.
Yeah, I suppose in some sense, because you have some, high-end phones have a really high resolution.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're higher than maybe a laptop screen. And this is where hopefully this will take that into consideration a lot, because you're viewing it
what we're doing really is taking the pain out of, from a developer's, designer's point of view, taking that pain out of having to worry too much about what actual physical resolution has my screen got. You don't have to worry about that.
Yep.
Now they've got a video here which kind of shows it. If you think about a layout, we've got 100 by 100 block, we've got some 100 point text, and we've got some Sega 24 point text, and this is our UI. We've got it laid out there. Now if you think about that on 3 different screens and you put them sort of side by side, physically they are different size, absolutely side by side. So you've got 200 by 200 at the top on the big screen, 150 by 150 physical pixels on a tablet screen, and 100 by 100 physical pixels on a phone screen. But then if you think about them, you move that out into 3D and take the viewing distance into account, objects further away seem smaller. So you have to really, this has to be factored in. And now if you place them in front of each other but at the right viewing distance, you can see that they actually have the same perceivable size. So it allows you, as a designer, you just work with the same font sizes, the same spacing and this sort of thing, and the scaling algorithm will take care of making sure it looks correct on each of these different devices. So it does simplify the job of the designer and really make life a lot easier.
And I suppose what we should mention here is that any time you in XAML you put a pixel value, that's an effective pixel, right? Not a real pixel on screen.
Exactly. So yeah, we've got.
So you're already designing with effective pixels without really knowing it.
You didn't really realise it. No, that's all right. That's already happening. So we have this effective pixel, which its actual physical size varies, but the user's perception of it, it's always the same size. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you can have an effective pixel could be made up of
16 in this case, isn't
16 physical pixels. Yeah, that's right, on a particular device, and that will vary from screen to screen, the high def to high res to low res screens, but
the device family.
The actual perceivable size will stay the same. So from your point of view, you just have to ignore, apart from with bitmaps, which we'll just mention in a moment, but in terms of your XAML layout and everything, you don't have to worry about your screen resolution, your dots per inch. No. You just design an effective pixels.
Yeah.
What about images? So what do we say?
Images are a tricky one, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not really using XAML vector.
No. So if you've got physically sized, those are physically. So actually we have a scaling algorithm. So we suggest that you supply bitmap images, image assets at various different scale factors.
So how do we do that? I mean, what's the process?
So we have different scaling system. We're going to come back to that tomorrow, actually, in a bit more detail. But essentially, we've got various. We suggest by default you supply 200 scale images. For example, if you do a file new project and look in the, you get some 200 scale tile asset images.
You'll see them in the assets, yes.
To, yeah. And you can create 100 scale, and you can create like 400 scale, and these scaling factors actually align with the scaling factors that are commonly used on iOS and on Android app development as well. So we've aligned with those. So if you are bringing it out from one platform to another, you can reuse the same artwork, which is nice. Yeah. So, but if you supply artwork and embed in it the scale name in the name, our modern resource technology will automatically select the right image asset
so we
for
make
the device that you're
right
running.
Choice.
Yeah, we make the right choice. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, but that's the kind of it. But in terms of your screen layouts and everything, effective pixels takes away all of the pain of that. Right, now let's think about what should you be designing. What am I designing? So if you're planning your design across, you've got all these different, so here's an example of some different screens and viewing distances, different size phones, different size and orientation tablets and all this sort of thing. We've got a huge variation on all of these, and this is just also picking out a few of them. So actually what we suggest is you kind of pick a few kind of actual points, ones to target specifically. And for this phone and tablet PC, we probably want to think of a 5-inch phone in portrait, an 8-inch tablet in landscape, and a 13-inch laptop. And if you kind of make those your key target areas, the designs that you kind of are thinking about, and when you think, okay, what should the user experience be on a 5-inch phone? What should the user experience be on a medium-sized tablet? What about a bigger screen? You think of those, then you don't get confused by thinking about all the myriad of ones in between.
Yeah,
and if you use adaptive design and responsive design techniques, you'll find that these designs will flow to the intermediate ones anyway. And
it's almost like your VSM state with almost like split view, where you've got the one where it disappears, the compact, and then the wide. In that sense,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. And in fact, if you want to put some effective pixel size and EPX sizes on each of these, the 5-inch phone is your 320 width. And then you got a phablet. Well, that one's a bit. Maybe you don't. 548.
Yep.
Medium tablet, phablet, and tablet 720,
yeah.
and then 1024 and higher is your 13-inch your desktops. And again, if you look at this, the user experience. This is a kind of an impression of the Mail app. Yep. On a big screen, we've got 3-column layout. You've got like a navigation pane, split view, and then you've got an inbox list, a selector, and then you've got the reading view. And you get down to a smaller tablet, and okay, we lose the navigation page. So we've gone 2-column now. So you just end up with the main list. And sure, you've got a hamburger or something to do higher levels of navigation. But so essentially, you're taking those two and you're shrinking the UI to just those. By the time you get to a phone, we're down into a single-column display.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of thinking about your design in terms of how you modify the user experience according to the size of screen that you're targeting. So let's have a quick look at a demo of one of the built-in apps here. Let's go on and let's run up the calculator, which the first-party apps, our apps if you like, are good examples of one. So here's the standard. Do you think we should go for standard?
I want to go scientific.
Scientific. All right.
Yeah.
Here's the scientific.
It always
calculator.
makes me feel more clever. Don't know why. I never use them.
No. What is this sin cos thing? I have no idea. But this is a responsive design. So actually, kind of got the phone view now. If we expand out, it's all nicely responsive. The spacing is increasing. It's just getting a bit bigger. Oh, and now actually we get a kind of a change to a 2-column display in the middle here.
So it shows your history and the memory that you saved.
Yeah, there's no history, no memory. But anyway, so you've got easy access to those sort of things, which that kind of stuff's still available over here. But presumably down here somewhere. I don't know. Maybe not. So anyway, looking, you got additional functionality gets exposed to the user.
It's gone wide now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. So that's one example of a first-party app that kind of does some of the things that we want to build into our own apps. So, as you design, in summary, we want to adapt to screen size changes. We need to adapt to input changes, and the controls take care of that for you. With whether you're using touch or whether you're using mouse keyboard, and you want to rely on the scaling, this effective pixel
scaling algorithm.
Just trust in that as you do your design. So if you want some principles, those are those.
And we'll be talking more about the scaling algorithm as well when we talk about porting later on in the series.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what happens there?
All right, thinking about this from a design techniques, how you kind of realise this that we're going to... Well, these are the standard responsive web design techniques.
The 6 R's.
The 6 R's, yeah. Do you know about these? Yes. Dave Crawford was waxing lyrical to me about this, but yeah. So these are the techniques that web designers have been using for some time. It's really kind of what we're doing is bringing those ideas to XAML and making the same things apply. So you can reposition content around the page, you can resize stuff, reflow, which you can switch from a single column to 2 columns, and reflow
So that's
stuff.
different from reposition, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, absolutely. Reveal, you expose like that history, expose additional content when you've got the space. Replace, you can actually say, okay, on a phone I'm going to have completely different. We replace one bit of UI with another. And re-architect is you throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, whoa, this is an Xbox, I'm going to change this to something completely different.
So it's got a new information architecture at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So you keep your code behind being the same, but you doing something really quite different because it makes sense. But in the most time, you just want to have a nice flowing UI. So, we saw this before. You could actually build two ways of thinking about this. You could build a single page that adapts to different screen sizes and orientations. And we've got these great techniques, which I'm going to drill down to in a minute, called visual states and adaptive triggers, to change that layout and make these changes. And the new relative panel is a great tool here for repositioning and causing stuff to reposition around as the screen size changes. So that's one, and this is the Skype thing where we've just basically modified it, resized it, and just
and we can see actually there's like a reflow of the image there, and like a position.
That's right. Or you could go for something quite different. So a tailored design is building slightly different user experiences. So this is the calendar where the phone is a glance and go, quick look at my next appointments, whereas this one's a much more richer, you're making use of that screen size to show something quite more detailed.
So it's always sort of optimizing based on the real estate available.
Yeah. Right. That's the principles.
Yeah.
How do we do it?
Theory into practice.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is visual states. So visual states are not new.
No.
I'm sure you've used them.
We've had them for a while.
Yeah. So, but they've been, would you say, well, they've always been easy to use.
They've always been easy to use, but I think now more than ever, they're more front and center because of the way you're targeting so many different devices now that actually you can't really ignore it.
No.
It's always there.
No, that's right. Blend is a great tool for working. This is where Blend really sort of comes into its own for doing this kind of design focus stuff. And also you can visualize different XAML, different visual states in Blend, which you can't do in Visual Studio. So in summary, a visual state allows you to define a different layout that you can select and that can then be applied to your UI. So, and it's discrete different sort of layouts, and then you just switch between them. Now, the old way of doing this, but and still a way you can do it today, is to do this in code. So, the way people have tended to use visual states is to handle sort of portrait and landscape. And so, typically, you'd hook up the size changed event. And you could then switch to a particular named visual state by using Visual State Manager.GoToState.
But I suppose this is now taken over with an adaptive trigger, right?
Funnily enough, you should exactly so. So this is the new way of doing that same thing. So effectively, it just does away with that code, and it's a nice, neat way of doing this. There are two built-in triggers: min window height and min window width, and then we've got this. Here's an example. This visual state will be triggered when the minimum window width is 501 or higher. And it will kind of always choose the next one up, select the best fit for it. There we go, the adaptive trigger. These are a zero-code solution for doing the same thing, essentially. Yes. Now, the other good thing that's changed is visual state setters. So previously, when you defined a visual state, it always did it in the context of a storyboard. So a storyboard is what? It's a...
I suppose it's just it is literally a storyboard where you got the keyframe and animation, really. Yeah.
So it's kind of usually extends over a time period and it does an animation. But you could also do it over a zero time and just do it.
Yeah.
And actual fact,
it's like a
particularly with visual states, that was usually the case. You just switch from one to the other.
Yeah.
So all that storyboard was just like fluff.
It became a lot of extra stuff that people didn't always want.
So instead, here we now have setters, so you can just absolutely distinctly set a particular property.
It's pretty much like a style, isn't it? Like, because you have setters on a style.
Very similar.
And
exactly.
Similar things.
Yeah. And in fact, it is almost the same syntax. Apart from the target it's a different different attribute.
It's not property.
So you just set the some particular property or relative panel or whatever. You can just change things very concisely inside the setters.
So I was going to say, because relative panel has a slightly different target where you have to put them in brackets, right?
It is, and actually I'll show you in the demo in a
Yeah.
minute doing this using the tools, because getting the syntax right is kind of tricky,
Yeah.
so it's much
Okay.
easier to use Blend to do this kind of thing. But Relative Panel is your other great tool here, where you allows you to position content, move stuff around, reposition, these kind of things. Is also a great tool, and in Visual State Setters you can move a block of content, reposition it relative to one of its siblings, or relative to the panel that's in the container. Okay, so we've got a quite complicated demo now.
Time.
Yeah. So this is how to do adaptive UI sample. Let's run it first. You've seen this already, but just to refresh. So it's the MV8, it's delicious.
It's delicious.
You know, we can add some tasks in here. We can edit stuff, and it's all good. And and then we can add a new one in there. Here's another new task. So there we go. And we've added that one in, and we can edit that. We can select a picture. It's quite rich, this. Quite nice. Yeah. We can go off and select an MS band people running for some reason.
Keeping fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now the other thing though, but it doesn't. It's not very. It's a little bit of adaptive thing, but then it all gets all scrunched up there. So we can really do a much better job. So at the moment it's just expanding across the frame, and it's all right, but we can do a much better job of this. So let's go and have a look at our view. The content of that list view is defined down here in the XAML.
Here we go.
In the list view, here is the content. Let's just change that design so it looks a bit better. There we go. And down in the list view, here's our data template. So every item shown in the list is defined in this data template. And I want to make this adaptive, so that I want to make it lay out a little bit better as it shrinks. So in that data template, now if you want to use adaptive triggers inside a data template, you have to create a user control.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add a new item to my project. It's a user control, and I'm going to call this the what we call this list to do item user control. Says what it says. Add that to our project, and of course it's empty initially. Well, it's got a bunch of stuff at the top of it, but it hasn't got any content. So go back to our main page, and I'm going to select all of that stuff that defines the content, the layout of my data items, that grid.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cut that out of there.
And you're going to move it into.
And I'll move it into this user control.
Yeah. Okay.
Paste it in.
Okay,
Just
so you're
replace
removing the
that.
root grid as well.
Yeah. So this grid becomes the new root grid.
Okay.
Let's just realign that because it offends me. There we go. But it's essentially exactly the same thing, but just as a user control. So that should work out just the same way. So if we go back to main page, actually in here now we can go in here and say views : there's our list to do user control. And there the designer showing it, so it works just the same. So we're good. We haven't broken anything yet. But make that a bit bigger. Now then, what about changing the layout of this? So what I'm going to do is go off to Blend. This is the best tool for this.
So unless you right-clicked and you just went, design in Blend, so you don't have to actually go to Blend and go File, open, and blah blah blah. It does all the magic for you.
Exactly. So yeah, they're quite well integrated. They're still separate tools, and they occasionally complain about somebody else has been messing with my files and this sort of thing. But so just wait for Blend to load.
Oh wow, what a difference.
Here we go. So this is now the designer's view of this. Now what I want to do is when the screen's narrow, let's hide that image. Let's get rid of that image. So we can do that by going into states. Let's create ourselves a visual state group. Doesn't matter what the name is. And then we're going to create a couple of visual states. First of all, I'm going to create one for the sort of wider view, a minimum of 500 effective pixels. And down here in this UI, you can now add. Well, you can't read that.
So you just double-click the visual state min 500, right, to bring this screen up.
It's actually that little the little lightning thing.
Lightning bolt. Yeah. Okay.
So we now added that for 500. We can add another state, and this one is going to be for the narrow state, so let's call it min 0. Click that little arrow again.
Yeah.
Add an adaptive trigger. The min window width on this one, you have to put 1. I got tripped over this. If you leave it at 0, it doesn't put anything in, and then it doesn't work. Now you see we've got the little red area, so we're now, any changes we make now only apply in this state. So I'm going to change that to be collapsed. So that image is gone now. We can also, you know, tinker with the width of the text block as well. So let's say in the narrow thing we're going to limit the width of it to let's think, I don't know, 270. So in the narrow state that's going to be as maximum as it can be.
Okay.
Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, just to show you the kind of stuff you can do. Now this is what that has done. I'm using the tools, and actually what it has done is pasted in these setters. You can see it's changed the image.ui element of visibility and the text block.framework element.max width, and we've got our triggers which cause it to trigger. Now let's back into Visual Studio. Let's run it and see how that works. So resize the window and we get narrow, and now that image has gone, and so we've got a slightly more pleasing effect, and we've got that adaptive UI stuff
which is a
working
state the second you get narrow. Nice.
Okay, so that's quite nice. Now, of course, that will work fine on the phone as well, because actually that narrow state, window state, by definition, is kind of going to be what you want on a phone. So,
yes.
So let's try that on the phone. Here's our phone. And it'll come up in a second. Takes a little while to deploy. It's installing various frameworks and stuff onto the emulator. Here's our splash screen, and you know, we can add some items in here. We're not sharing the state here. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about the cloud. So here we enter some new ones on the phone. Here's the phone.
And you can see there's no
there's no image.
No image.
That's right. We can obviously take a picture. There we go. Snapped one in the emulator. There it is. Beautiful. We can set it to be as complete. So we've got all that editing stuff. And there we go. So we've got that narrow view works great on the phone as well.
Okay.
Now let's take this a little bit further, I think. So that's a good start. But what can we do here as well? Now, look, we've got this kind of, what about the bigger screen? We're looking at H in tablet here. Let's go up to a 13.3-inch desktop. You know, and we've got a big, even more area. We've got this area over here we could use. Why don't we have a inline editor so that when you're on a big screen, you can edit on the same screen. You don't have to. Don't have to navigate.
It's not a bad idea.
So this is the edit to do item page. That's the guts of it. So again, what I want to do, and all the content of that is in that scroll viewer. That guy there. So that's the content of all of that. So let's just copy that. And I'm going to pop this into yet another user control. I probably should have replaced that in the other one. Then this one this is going to be my sort of on-screen editor rather than a separate page. To do item full view user control.
Okay.
And in order to, so then, we've got our user control. Paste that XAML in. There we go. And okay, that's, well, it's kind of all right, but we need to change the design height of that. So in the designer, we're actually seeing everything. So let's just whack that up to 550. So that's a bit better. Put it down to something where we can see. There we go. So we've got a nice design surface. We can see that's the content. Well, I want to put this on the right of the main screen only when we're on a bigger screen.
Sure. Yeah,
so this is kind of making an adaptive UI that's not causing unnecessary navigations. So now here's the grid. That's the content area. I'm going to just create 2 columns on that. So I'm going to create myself 2 columns. So there we go. It's decided that's 19 star and 21 star. I'm going to make them equal size. So they're star and star. So 2 equal width columns.
Okay.
And in the first, here's our list view is in column 0 because that's by default.
And then you need to put.
And now I'm going to paste it. I've got a snippet here actually, which puts in a beautiful blue coloured background. I said I wasn't a designer. There we go. And on top of it is an instance of our user control we just created. So that's on the right, and the list is kind of on the left. I've got some tweaking to do. All right, save everything, and off to blend again.
There you go. That's the reload.
Yeah. And we go off to. Let's go and find our main page. I'm going to go to main page. That's the one we've just been tweaking in Visual Studio. Let's go and do some visual states work in here as well. So states, let's create some states on the page. Again, new group, and a similar thing. We're going to have a larger or a medium one, which is going to be kind of the steady state. Add an adaptive trigger. The width for that is going to be 800. Let's go and add another one. And this one is the this is going to be the minimum one. So again,
set to 1.
Adaptive trigger of 1. And then finally, we're going to add the. So in this one, we want to have this stuff on the right in the narrow state needs to be hidden.
Yes.
So we're going to just select that stuff. We've got the red border is on there, so we can go off and we can just set the visibility of that to be collapsed. And we also want to do in the narrow one as well. Want to have that. Let's think, make sure that's collapsed. Yeah. And the to-do item list, we probably want to do with that. When we're in the narrow thing, we want it to extend across both columns so that it's not scrunched up in a compressed left column. So we got column span. That you can't read it. Because that says column span.
Yeah.
It needs to be right. That needs to be 1 in the normal. Hang on, I lost the edit thing. Set the editor back on. Sorry. And then so that needs to be 1. Yeah, we're good on that. And then needs to be column span 2 while we're in the minimum state. And then we also need to hook on that we want to go off to the selection changed event on that to-do list as well, because what we want to do as we change it to select a new item, we're going to, if the inline viewer is visible at this point, so in other words, if it's the widescreen, then we just need to set the data context on that user control so that it's got the right item displayed in so
your selection then goes and edits the right screen.
It keeps in sync with the selected item on the left. And then we also need to, if you click on an item, it previously used to navigate to a separate page. So again on there, if the inline, the view grid is collapsed, then we only want to do it if it's collapsed.
Yeah, correct.
So this kind of should sort out our logic and gives us 2 different usages of our page. Right, that should be it. Let's give it a go. We'll run it on the desktop.
Yeah, because you'll want that resolution.
Yeah, that's right. So
changing.
We can do the resizing. So we're in the narrow view at the moment, and if we expand out the inline editor, it appears. So that's good. And then we've got the real narrow view in the list. And if we select an item on there, then the data context, and we've got that inline editing experience now, and it's not navigating to another page. So you can make changes directly in there. So we've got a good user experience without having to navigate to a whole other page. So that's good for our big screen users. And of course, when you get to narrow screen, well, nothing breaks because you still navigate we're back to what we were before. So that's kind of, probably a more advanced view of having an adaptive design, but and it still works in, well, I'm not keen on the blue, to be honest. I need to revisit it. It's certainly a unique graphical interpretation. Yeah, so there you go. That's a kind of quite a detailed example.
That was cool. Yeah, it's detailed, but it was good.
Right. I've shown you there. That was the adaptive triggers that come out of the box, and all you've got is the min window width and the min window height. Those are the ones that are kind of baked in. But you can create custom triggers.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool.
Yeah. So custom triggers support your special scenarios. So you can create your own triggers, and all you need to do is create a class that inherits from state trigger base. And that state trigger base actually has in it a single method called setActive. And essentially in your logic, you need to have in your trigger, it needs to kind of, either when it's invoked or probably hook up on a size change or some other environmental event, it needs to be that's detecting some environmental change. You need to set active to false when the trigger is not true and set active to true when it is true.
So it's just knowing when to fire that particular state is what that's doing.
So this example, this rather concise bit of code here is how you find out what device family you're running on.
So this will return like mobile or IoT.
Exactly. So when you use this trigger, you say, I want this, the trigger for this is, are we on device family mobile or are we on device family desktop? And the logic in here will test whatever you've configured in the XAML, and depending on what device family we're actually running on, which you get from this qualifier's device family, then it will return true or false. So that's the kind of example
Cool.
of that. Let's just create another. Let's have a little example of this as well. So I've got this sample. It's got a bunch of triggers already in it. So we've got an API information trigger, we've got control size trigger, device family trigger, and all this kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to create ourselves a new device. This is the device family one, the one we just saw on the slide. So that's the way that one works. But we can actually, there's the set active, and that's what we're testing against, the device family. Okay, so that's the kind of principle. So I'm going to add a new one to this. Add a class. This one is going to be an orientation trigger. So we're going to test for portrait or landscape.
The landscape, yeah, which makes sense.
So here's our class.
So
we're going to inherit from state trigger
base. Yeah.
And
you have to add the, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, resolve that.
UI XAML.
We're going to put in a property on here, public property, of which is of type application view orientation.
I see. Okay.
So this is actually the
so
type
this is what you
that
represents
set in
your like VSM.
Exactly.
You can set the property.
Need to resolve that in Windows UI view management. There we go, orientation. And that's just a getter and a setter. And then we need to have some logic in this. So let's put a constructor in here. And in the constructor, we're going to hook in this object the window.current.sizeChanged event. So as the window that this trigger is used in, its size changes, this event will be firing. And we're going to do an inline event handler here. So we're going to set this active, so this will be true if the application view dot get for current view orientation is equal to the value of the property that's been set. So that will return true or false according every time size change fires.
Or not,
yeah, and we're just going to copy that as well, because not only when it's size change, we also want to do it when it's constructed. So that's our trigger. We can go off to main page now. Just build it, so we make sure that type's available.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go off and build some UI. So I'm going to go out to our friend Blend again for this. Anything to do with triggers is best done in Blend.
Okay.
And just let that load.
I have to admit, I'm a Visual Studio guy, but maybe you've converted me to go to Blend every time now.
Yeah, for these kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I usually work in Visual Studio.
I hand crank a lot of mine. So
no, that's right. And this massive UI, we're going to build we're going to put a rectangle, a blue rectangle, and we're going to do another rectangle, which is a red rectangle. It's blue at the moment. It's going to be red in a minute.
You're very artistic.
Oh, no, I'd say just, yeah. All right, now we want to create some states. So user state group. Visual state group. We'll have a visual state that's called portrait, and that needs to be an adaptive trigger. You've got the normal ones, but you can now go other type. You can drill down and find our custom trigger. We can have an orientation trigger. There we go.
And this is one of the main reasons why you want to build the project before you go over
you
to
won't
Blend,
see it if you
otherwise
haven't
won't
built
see
it. Yeah. And then you can select portrait or landscape. So this one is the portrait one. In portrait, we're going to change the visibility. So the red one in portrait, we want to make that collapsed. And this one, obviously, you want to make sure that's
visible. So you go collapsed and visible, just show it forces a XAML or VSM in place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So it's worth toggling it just to force it into the definition. Otherwise, it doesn't.
It just assumes there's no change.
Yeah, that's right. And then the other one, obviously, is Visual State Landscape, which also uses the same trigger, but this time, this is where you're setting effectively that property we put in that custom trigger. So we add it, and then here's the properties. You'd set this time. We set it to landscape.
Landscape. Yeah. That's already set. Yeah.
Yeah. So just explicitly set that. And this time, when we got the red record option thing is on again. So this time we set that one to be collapsed, and this one.
So you go collapsed and then visible again.
Yeah, that's right. And then that should be good. And then we can go ahead and It's just to confirm the XAML
so
that
you can see
created.
it in there, yeah.
Yeah, orientation, portrait, orientation, landscape, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And set the visibility of these guys. So
Cool.
this should do what we want. So we can now just run this, and here's our, there we go.
Oh yeah, there you go. Nice.
There's our nice custom trigger working. And obviously you can have, there's loads and loads of different ways you can do these triggers, and that's just...
So you can have ones like on battery or network connectivity.
Well,
or
in fact, one of the ones in this sample is
Yeah.
network available, yeah.
Because I can imagine that's
Device
kind of
family.
useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very useful. You can have, you know, you can have a UI on your screen that's sort of
So it says you
showing
are now
it
offline.
offline or online.
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's good. Right. Finally, on this one, so building tailored views. So this is where so far we've kind of shown you taking one view and sort of making it multifaceted and adapting things, this sort of thing. So, but there are cases where, you know, that might, maybe it's just so different the experience you want to give that doesn't make sense. You want to kind of have just to make your job easier, maybe you actually want to have distinct different XAML pages for different device families. And the classical example for that is going to be the Xbox when we get the tooling for that. So this shows an example here. Again, this is how you find out what family you're on. You get the application model, resources, call, resource constant, get qualifying values. And in there, that's a dictionary of values. And the device family there, if it's an Xbox, then you could navigate to main page Xbox. Otherwise, we navigate to main page. So that's one way of doing it. So you're actually creating discrete, different whole pages. Yeah. And that doesn't need to be too difficult for you. You can still have the same view model behind them. So, you know, if you're using good architecture and MVVM, sure, it can be different UI, but keeping that XAML page just about presentation and connecting through to a common view model, and you know, it's kind of happy days, really.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's reusable.
The other option is XAML views.
So this is that.
Yeah.
Accidental click people sometimes do when they want a blank page and they get this chappy.
Exactly. Here. So let's go off and let's do a XAML views sample. So I've got here a XAML view. It actually contains a single page, main page. And what's interesting about this page is that nothing very much, as it turns out. But it's got two text blocks on it.
Yeah.
One of which sets the value directly in the XAML.
Yeah.
And the other one is set in code, so it's not set in XAML, so it's actually invisible in the designer.
This is in your code behind, is it?
Because it's in the code behind. So this text is set in the common XAML view, so that's what that is. And this one, this is our code behind, and this is where it sets it. This sets it. So obviously you won't be surprised to see that this. Let's run it on the emulator since that was the one that's selected. You won't be surprised to see that this comes up with this text is set in the common XAML view, and that text is set in the common code behind. Okay, no surprises there so far. Now then, I want to add a new view just for device family mobile. So I can add a new item, and this is the one that we said before is going to trip people up. This is where you want this XAML view. And you need to make it the same name as the base one. So the other thing it does is it puts main page 1 by .xaml, but you actually need to make it the same name.
Okay.
Actually, I'm doing this wrong, aren't I? What I need to do first is create in here, add a new folder.
Yeah.
Because the name is important. You didn't stop me there. I was about to crash and burn.
It would have stopped you. Visual Studio would have said.
It would have said, no, you've already got this. So now I've got a folder called Device Family Mobile. And this is where, so this main page.xaml is in the root. And this is where I want to add my new item. XAML view. It's going to be called main page 1.xaml. I'm going to add that. You'll notice a XAML view doesn't have a code behind. So what it does is it uses the MRT, Modern Resource Technology, will automatically select this if you're running on Device Family Mobile, and it will do this. So actually, I'm going to have almost exactly the same XAML in my mobile version, which currently doesn't have anything. Control V, except this one is set in the mobile XAML view. But the other one is still coming from the code behind. So now, of course, if we run this, what will happen is you will get the this text is set in the mobile XAML view, but the other one is still set in the common code
because it's the code behind. So you're actually borrowing the code behind from the original XAML CS, but still taking the view of the device.
I'll be honest, this technique is not going to be for everybody. No. Some people will find this interesting. It's there for you to use. And obviously, if I set the local machine, go to local machine now, the desktop, I could create a device family desktop and put a XAML view in there as well and have a unique view for desktop. But if you don't actually provide one specifically for that device family, you get the common one. So you kind of fall back to the common one.
Understood.
So yeah, you could use this for doing specific, and that could be an alternative to doing responsive design all in the same view. You could actually separate it out.
What's the pros and cons of doing this way versus like the VSM? And
exactly. It's just if you, I suppose, if your VSM, your one adaptive view is getting too complex, and you're maybe having trouble visualizing the two if it's very rich and a lot of changes.
Or maybe if they're just very different. Maybe if your desktop view is just so different from your phone view, the VSM is actually just turning everything off and turning everything back on another bit. It's just maybe this makes sense. So
it's a technique there that's it's interesting that you could use. So there we go. So that pretty much wraps this one up. I mean, in summary, we have lots of cool tools to build an adaptive UI, and it actually seems a bit daunting at first, I think, when you first, when you've kind of had this mindset before of just creating device specific. But it actually, you know, if you just think of avoiding hard-coded pixel sizes on columns and rows, and allow things to flow, and use the built-in capabilities of text blocks to word wrap over multiple lines, and you know, and this kind of thing, allow things to flow. It's actually not too painful to create a nice UI that will flow using these other things like VSMs. And
it's one of those things, once you've tried it, it's pretty easy. You'll just get it like that. It's just easy to do it.
So that's what we talked about. Design language, how the stuff we have in Windows that helps you, ways to think about how to go about and what to target. And then we went through the actual VSMs, the triggers, and XAML views and all that kind of good stuff, and a bit about the relative panel.
Fantastic.
All right, so we're all done. Thanks for watching. We're now, if you're watching the live event, we're now going to take an hour's break. So it's lunchtime here in Seattle, Redmond. And we'll be back afterwards to talk about, we've got in sessions rest for today, we've got new stuff in data binding for XAML, we've got stuff about XAML performance. The tooling we've got in Visual Studio, really great stuff for there. We've got a good session on the web technologies that's coming up. So all that this afternoon. So please join us for more. And if you're also in the Pacific Coast, enjoy your lunch.
Yeah.
See you soon.
See you later.